Too bruised to stand, she collapsed at the ballroom, until a Alpha King's gentle hands changed her fate. The grand ballroom of Eldoria's palace gleamed like a sea of stars. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high vaulted ceiling, reflecting light onto golden walls and marble floors. Nobles moved gracefully in their finest gowns and coats, their masks hiding smiles and secrets alike. Music floated through the air, soft and melodic, yet beneath the beauty, a tension lingered. Whispers of power, old rivalries, and unspoken curses threaded through every corner. Lady Alara stood near the entrance, her gloved hands clutching the edges of her dress. Her gown was simple but elegant, soft blue silk that shimmered in the chandelier light. She was not born into wealth, yet she carried herself with dignity, even as her heart trembled. Her past had left her bruised in ways that no gown or mask could hide. Her eyes scanned the ballroom. Men and women danced in perfect harmony, laughter ringing like bells. Yet for Alara, it was a world of shadows. Every glance she received seemed measured, judging. Every whispered conversation carried her name, not spoken aloud but known. She had fallen from favor, her family disgraced, and now she was nothing more than a shadow in a golden hall. The music shifted, and a new dance began. Couples glided across the floor, spinning in perfect rhythm. Alara took a careful step forward, but the weight of exhaustion pressed on her. Her heart pounded not from excitement but from fear and anxiety. She had promised herself she would endure this night, remain strong, appear unshaken. But the memory of the past clung to her like a heavy cloak. Her vision blurred. A sharp pain ran through her legs, and suddenly her knees gave way. Alara stumbled, her hand reaching out to the nearest pillar, but it was too late. She fell to the marble floor, the echo of her collapse silencing the music for a brief moment. All eyes turned toward her, whispers spread like fire. Then he appeared. Kalen, the Alpha King of Eldoria, stepped forward. He was a man of legend. Tales of his fierce rule traveled even to distant lands. He was said to be merciless to his enemies and unyielding to those who betrayed the kingdom. Yet here, at this moment, he moved with an unexpected gentleness. His cloak brushed the floor as he knelt beside her, his dark eyes studying her with a mix of concern and curiosity. His hand, strong and steady, reached for her arm, lifting her gently from the cold marble. "You should not be here alone," Kalen said, his voice deep, calm, yet commanding. "You are too vulnerable in this crowd." Alara blinked up at him. She had heard of the Alpha King, of his iron will and fearsome power. Yet here he was, offering care instead of cruelty. Something inside her stirred, a small, hesitant flicker of hope. I can manage," she whispered, her voice trembling not from weakness, but from the unfamiliarity of being seen without judgment. Kalen's eyes softened. "Some burdens cannot be borne alone." His words, simple as they were, struck her. She wanted to recoil, to guard herself, but she could not. His presence was too commanding, yet too kind, a paradox she could not ignore. He guided her to a marble bench near the fountain at the center of the ballroom. Water trickled softly, and the gentle sound was a comfort amidst the murmurs of the guests. Alara sank onto the bench, her hands shaking slightly. She tried to steady her breathing, but the flood of attention made her skin crawl. Kalen knelt beside her, careful not to crowd her space. His eyes roamed the ballroom, scanning for threats. The king was always alert, always aware, and Alara felt the weight of that watchful gaze. It was not oppressive, however. It was protective. "You are brave to come here tonight," he said after a moment, his voice low, almost a whisper meant only for her. "Few would face the world after what you have endured." Alara's lips pressed into a thin line. She had spent years hiding, enduring the quiet humiliation and sharp whispers of those who had turned against her family. To hear someone acknowledge her courage, especially the Alpha King, unsettled her in ways she could not name. I do not wish to be noticed," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I only came because." Her words faltered, swallowed by the noise of the room. Kaelin placed a hand lightly over hers. "Because you have a strength even you do not see," he said. "And strength deserves recognition." For a brief moment the room faded. The music, the whispers, the glittering masks, all disappeared. There was only this man, the Alpha King, kneeling before her with eyes that seemed to look not at her dress, her status, or her scars, but at her very soul. Ilara's chest tightened. She had spent so long hiding, protecting herself, and yet here was someone who offered safety without question. Without warning, tears pricked at her eyes, unbidden, a mixture of relief and fear. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. Kaelin noticed but did not comment. Instead, he offered her his hand again. "Stand," he urged gently. "Not for them, for yourself. You must not let the world define you." With a hesitant nod, Ilara placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, unwavering, yet careful. With his support, she rose to her feet. The crowd had quieted, whispers had paused. She felt eyes on her, curious, cautious. Yet the Alpha King's presence gave her courage. With his steady hands holding hers, she felt anchored, almost as if she could face the entire ballroom without crumbling. "Thank you," she murmured, though the words felt inadequate. Kaelin's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "No thanks is needed. Courage is its own reward." Their moment was interrupted by a subtle shift in the room. A figure in a dark mask lingered near the back, watching them. There was something sharp and calculating in the way they moved. Ilara felt a shiver run down her spine. The moment of safety with Kaelin had been fragile, and now it seemed the world still held danger. "Do you know them?" Kaelin asked quietly, his hand tightening slightly around hers. Ilara shook her head. "No, I do not." "Then stay close," Kaelin said. "I will not let anyone harm you tonight." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Ilara remained near Kaelin, each moment a mixture of wonder and fear. She had never been treated with such care, and yet she could not ignore the whispers, the subtle glances from those who saw her as a threat, an outcast, or a curiosity. By the time the last dance ended, the ballroom felt heavier. The shadows seemed longer, more tangible. Yet Kaelin remained by her side, a steadfast presence amidst the glittering danger. "Rest now," he said, leading her toward the private gardens outside the ballroom. The night air was cool and fragrant with the scent of night-blooming flowers. Moonlight spilled over the marble paths, casting silver patterns across the fountain's waters. Ilara felt the weight of exhaustion settle upon her. For the first time in years, she felt she could breathe without fear. Kaelin had not demanded anything, had not judged her, and yet had offered more than protection. He had offered trust. But even as relief washed over her, a sense of unease lingered. The shadowed figure from the ballroom had vanished, but the memory of their gaze haunted her. Someone knew her secret, her pain, and perhaps even the truth about her family's fall. Kaelin noticed her tension. "You are not safe entirely," he said softly, almost as if reading her thoughts. "But I will stand with you, tonight and beyond if you allow it." Ilara looked at him, the moonlight catching the gold in his dark eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, fate had brought her here not for shame, but for something more. A gentle breeze passed, rustling the leaves of the garden, carrying with it the faintest whisper of danger. Ilara shivered slightly, and Kaelin's hand found hers again. "Do not fear what has already happened," he murmured. "Fear only the shadows that have not yet arrived." Her heart tightened. She wanted to believe him, to let herself feel safe. Yet deep inside, she knew the night was far from over. There were enemies watching, waiting, and she was too fragile, too bruised to face them alone. And yet, with the Alpha King's gentle hands guiding her, she felt a spark of strength ignite. A spark that whispered, maybe she could stand again, maybe she could fight, maybe she could survive the night and the world not as a shadow but as herself. The ballroom glittered in the distance, and somewhere inside a promise stirred. A promise of courage, of change, and perhaps of something far more powerful: trust. But as Alara and Kaelin disappeared into the moonlit garden, the shadowed figure from the ballroom lingered in the palace doorway, eyes glinting, a silent threat that their night of fragile peace would soon be shattered. The moon hung low over the palace gardens, its silver light reflecting off the fountains and statues. The garden was quiet, a stark contrast to the grandeur and noise of the ballroom. Shadows stretched between the carved marble pillars, and the scent of night-blooming flowers drifted in the cool air. Lady Alara walked slowly, her hand resting lightly in Kaelin's. Every step was careful, her mind spinning with the events of the evening. Kaelin had guided her away from the ballroom, away from the curious eyes and whispers. He had not demanded explanations or apologies. He had simply been there. And that simple presence, steady and unshakable, filled Alara with a strange warmth she had not felt in years. "You are quieter than most who come here," Kaelin said softly, his voice breaking the gentle silence. "Do you always watch from the shadows?" Alara shook her head, careful to keep her composure. "I do not like attention," she admitted. "It reminds me of everything I have lost, everything I should have had but never did." Kaelin's gaze softened. "And yet here you are at the palace, facing the very world that has tried to break you." Her breath caught at his words. He spoke not with judgment but with understanding, a recognition of pain she had hidden for so long. She wanted to shrink back, to retreat into her shell, but the pull of his presence was stronger than her fear. "Why do you care?" she asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. Kaelin's hand brushed hers, a touch both gentle and commanding. "Because I see strength where others see weakness," he replied, "and strength deserves protection, not scorn." Alara looked up at him, her chest tightening. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. Nobles had mocked her, servants had pitied her. But Kaelin treated her like a person, not a shadow of her past. They reached a secluded fountain, its waters glimmering under the moonlight. Alara sank onto the edge, feeling the cool stone beneath her fingers. Kaelin remained standing for a moment, scanning the darkened garden, alert to every rustle of leaves, every distant sound. "Sit," he said finally, his tone soft but firm. "You need rest." She obeyed, though her heart still raced. "You do not need to stay with me," she said. "This is your palace, your duties. I am nothing." "You are not nothing," Kaelin said, kneeling beside her. "You are here, alive and courageous enough to face this night. That is more than many can say." Alara wanted to speak, to thank him, but words failed her. She had grown used to being invisible, to being ignored or ridiculed. And yet here was someone who saw her, truly saw her. A silence stretched between them, not awkward but filled with unspoken understanding. The night air carried their shared thoughts, the quiet of the garden allowing them a rare moment of honesty. "I fear what others will think," Alara admitted at last. They have been cruel. They will see me as weak, as someone who does not belong." Kaelin's eyes, dark and intense, held hers. "Let them think what they will. You do not need their approval, only your own." Her heart tightened. No one had ever said anything like this to her. She had always believed that the world's opinion mattered more than her own strength. Yet here in the Alpha King's presence, she felt the possibility of something different. Kaelin studied her for a long moment, then spoke again, his voice low and serious. "I will protect you, but you must trust me. There are dangers here you cannot yet see, threats that move like shadows in the palace halls. If you remain alone, you will not survive them." Alara hesitated. To trust someone, especially a king, was dangerous, and yet his hand remained steady, warm, and reassuring. She felt the tension in her shoulders ease, if only slightly. I do not know if I can," she whispered. "You can," Kaelin said simply. "And you will, not because I force you, but because you have the strength within you. I only give it guidance." The words were both comforting and unnerving. Alara had spent her life hiding, afraid of being seen or judged. But here, someone was offering her a chance, not just to survive, but to rise. Kalen reached into his cloak and pulled out a small, delicate charm shaped like a leaf of silver. He placed it in her hand. "This is a token," he said, "a reminder that you are not alone, that you have allies even in the darkest places." Alara turned the charm over in her fingers, its weight light, yet its presence reassuring. I do not know what to say," she admitted. "Do not say anything," Kalen replied. "Actions speak louder than words, and your actions tonight have already spoken volumes." The wind rustled through the garden, carrying with it a faint, distant whisper. Alara felt a shiver run down her spine. The garden, while beautiful, held secrets. She had learned that the palace was full of hidden corridors, quiet stairwells, and unseen eyes. Kalen seemed to notice her tension. "Do not be afraid," he said. "I will not let anything harm you." For a moment, she wanted to believe him completely. She wanted to let go of her fear, to rest in the knowledge that someone strong, someone capable, was beside her. Yet the shadow from the ballroom lingered in her thoughts. That figure, hidden behind a mask, had watched her fall. There was something sharp in their gaze, a threat she could not yet name. "You see danger where I do not," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. Kalen's gaze followed hers, narrowing as he scanned the shadows of the garden. "I see what you cannot," he said, "and I will face it for you. That is my promise." Alara felt a warmth spread through her chest. It was not warmth of comfort alone, but of hope. Perhaps she could face the palace, the whispers, and the shadows of her past, not alone, but with someone who truly understood her. "Why me?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely audible. "Why care for someone like me?" Kalen looked at her, his expression unreadable, yet his eyes softened. "Because strength, courage, and heart are rare, and because I see something in you that others cannot, something worth protecting." Her chest tightened at his words. She had been invisible for so long, her existence overlooked or dismissed. Yet here was someone, a king of all Eldoria, who not only noticed her but valued her. They walked further into the garden, the moonlight illuminating the paths ahead. The statues of ancient kings and queens seemed to watch over them, silent witnesses to a fragile moment of trust forming between two people who carried burdens too heavy for many to understand. Alara's mind wandered to her family, to the pain of their fall, to the whispers that had followed her since childhood. And yet, she felt something new stirring, courage. Not the reckless kind, but the quiet, steady kind that allowed her to face her fears without being paralyzed by them. Kalen's hand remained on hers, a constant reassurance. "You are stronger than you believe," he said, "and tonight is only the beginning." Her heart fluttered at his words. "The beginning," she repeated. "Yes," he said, his voice carrying a promise she could not ignore. "There is much to come, dangers and challenges you cannot yet see, but I will not let you face them alone. Will you trust me?" Alara hesitated, the weight of the question pressing on her. To trust him was to step into unknown territory, to risk disappointment or betrayal. And yet, the thought of facing the palace, the shadows, and the whispers alone was unbearable. I will try," she said finally, her voice soft but resolute. Kalen's eyes softened, and a faint smile touched his lips. "That is all I ask." For a long moment they walked in silence, the only sounds the trickle of fountains and the rustle of leaves. Alara felt a sense of peace she had not known in years. Perhaps, with Kalen by her side, she could survive the palace, face the whispers, and even confront the shadows of her past. But as they reached the edge of the garden, the wind shifted. A soft, deliberate sound reached their ears, a footstep careful and measured moving through the shadows. Kalen stiffened, his hand tightening slightly around hers. "Someone is watching," he murmured. Alara's heart raced. "The figure from the ballroom," she whispered. Kalen's gaze narrowed, scanning the darkness. "Yes, they have not left, and they will not stop until they have what they seek." Alara swallowed hard. The fragile sense of safety she had felt moments ago vanished, replaced by a tense awareness of danger. Yet beside her, Kalen's presence remained steady, a shield against the unknown. "Then we must be ready," he said, his voice low, commanding, yet filled with care. "Tonight was only the first step. The shadows are here, but we will face them together." Ilara nodded, gripping his hand. For the first time in her life, she felt that perhaps she was not alone. Perhaps she could face the palace, the shadows, and the whispers, not as a victim, but as someone who had the courage to stand and someone who had the strength to fight. The moonlight bathed them both as they turned back toward the palace, aware that the night was far from over, and that dangers and opportunities lay ahead. And in the distance, the shadow from the ballroom waited, patient and calculating, a silent promise that the story of Lady Ilara and the Alpha King was only beginning. The palace felt different after that night. The music of the ballroom and the laughter of the nobles no longer reached Lady Ilara in the same way. She walked through the corridors with Kaelin beside her, each step heavy with both caution and curiosity. The moon had dipped behind clouds, leaving the halls dim and quiet. Shadows stretched across the marble floors, and flickering torchlight cast strange shapes along the walls. Ilara could feel the tension in every corner. She had seen the whispers, felt the glances, and sensed the danger lingering like a storm waiting to break. Yet beside her, Kaelin moved with confidence, his presence a shield against the unseen threats. "We must go somewhere safe," Kaelin said, his voice calm but firm. "There are places in this palace that few know of, secret chambers where danger cannot follow." Ilara glanced up at him. "Secret chambers?" she asked, a mixture of fear and fascination in her voice. "Yes," Kaelin replied. "The palace has many stories. Some speak of treasures, some of curses, and some of those curses are very real. Tonight I will show you one of these places." They moved quickly and quietly through hidden passages, the walls cool to the touch and carved with ancient symbols that seemed to hum with power. Ilara felt a shiver run down her spine. The palace she had entered as a guest now felt like a living, breathing entity, full of secrets, danger, and old magic. Finally, they arrived at a heavy wooden door carved with intricate designs. Kaelin pushed it open, revealing a chamber unlike any Ilara had ever seen. Crystals hung from the ceiling, catching the faint torchlight and scattering rainbow patterns across the walls. Shelves lined with ancient scrolls and artifacts filled the space, and in the center stood a pedestal holding a glowing relic, a small, intricately carved stone that pulsed with a soft, silver light. "This is one of the hidden chambers," Kaelin explained, stepping inside. "It has been in my family for generations. Few have seen it, and even fewer understand its power." Ilara approached the pedestal, her eyes drawn to the relic. It seemed alive, almost as if it were breathing. A strange warmth radiated from it, and she could feel a connection she could not explain. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kaelin's expression grew serious. "This is the Heartstone," he said. "It is tied to the bloodline of the rulers of Eldoria. It has the power to protect and the power to curse. My family has long been burdened by a curse that binds us to fear and control. Only someone who awakens the heart within me can help lift it." Ilara's breath caught. "You mean someone else can break the curse?" Kaelin nodded. "Yes, but it is not easy. It requires trust, courage, and understanding. And it is why I brought you here. You have the strength within you, even if you do not yet see it." Ilara felt a flutter in her chest. She had come to the palace as a shadow of her former self, too afraid to speak, too broken to hope. And yet here was a man, a king, offering her a chance to change not only her fate but his as well. I do not know if I am capable," she admitted. "I am not like you." "You are more like me than you realize," Kaelin said gently. "Strength is not only in power or swordsmanship. It is in courage, in compassion, in the willingness to stand even when the world expects you to fall." Ilara's gaze shifted to the Heartstone. It pulsed as if in response to her presence, a soft, silver light growing brighter with each heartbeat. A strange warmth spread through her fingers when she reached toward it. She felt a connection she could not explain, as if the relic recognized her, accepted her. Kalen stepped closer. "The Heartstone responds to those who have true courage," he said, "and it seems it recognizes you. There is a reason you are here, Alara. You are not merely a guest or a visitor. You are part of a destiny that has been waiting for you." Alara's heart raced. She had spent her life believing that she had no destiny, that she was insignificant. And yet, here was a chance to change everything. For the next hours, Kalen guided her through the chamber, teaching her about the relic, the palace, and the old stories of his family. He showed her scrolls that spoke of rulers who had been both feared and revered, of curses that had shaped generations, and of hearts that had been awakened to break the cycle. Alara listened intently, her mind absorbing every word. She began to feel a shift inside herself, a growing strength, a spark of courage that had lain dormant for too long. She realized that she was not powerless. She had survived pain, loss, and betrayal. She had endured the whispers of the world and had not been destroyed. "Do you see it now?" Kalen asked, his dark eyes studying her. "Do you see the strength that has always been within you?" Alara nodded slowly. I think I am beginning to." Kalen smiled, a rare, gentle expression that softened his fierce presence. "Good. Because strength alone is not enough. You must also have heart, compassion, and the courage to act when the world is against you." The words settled over her like a warm cloak. For the first time in her life, Alara felt that she could face her fears, that she could step into a world that had once seemed too cruel and too dangerous. And she felt something else, something she could not yet name, a deep connection to Kalen, to his burdens, and to the destiny that had brought them together. But even as she embraced this new sense of strength, the distant memory of the shadowed figure from the ballroom lingered. Alara's heart skipped a beat. Danger was never far away in this palace. Someone was still watching, waiting for the right moment. Kalen noticed her tension. "The palace is full of enemies," he said quietly. "Not all are visible and not all are loyal, but we are prepared. Together we are stronger than they can ever imagine." Alara took a deep breath. "Together," she repeated, the word tasting strange yet comforting on her lips. She had spent so long alone, and yet now she felt part of something greater, part of a partnership that promised safety and understanding. They continued to explore the hidden chamber, Kalen teaching her how to read the old scrolls, how to sense the subtle magic that lingered in the walls, and how to recognize threats before they arrived. Alara was surprised at how much she absorbed, how quickly her fear gave way to focus and determination. Hours passed like minutes, and soon the first light of dawn began to touch the sky, turning the dark blue night into soft shades of pink and gold. Alara stood at the edge of the chamber, gazing at the Heartstone, her mind filled with new understanding. She realized that her presence in the palace was not an accident. She was not just surviving, she was awakening. Kalen stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You have done well tonight," he said. "Not because of anything I have done, but because of the courage you have found within yourself." Alara turned to him, her eyes bright with a mixture of gratitude and determination. I will not fail," she said softly. Kalen's gaze met hers, steady and intense. "I do not expect you to, and you will not. The Heartstone has recognized you, and so have I. Together we can face the dangers that lie ahead, but you must be ready. The palace is not yet safe, and there are enemies who will try to stop us." Alara nodded, feeling the weight of his words but also the strength they gave her. For the first time, she felt capable of facing whatever came next. She was no longer just a guest, no longer just a shadow. She was part of a greater story, one that she had the power to shape. Just as she was beginning to feel a sense of peace, a faint sound reached the chamber. A soft, deliberate footstep echoed through the corridors. Alara stiffened, her heart racing. Kalen's hand found hers instantly, his grip firm and reassuring. "Someone approaches," he said quietly. "Be ready." Alara's pulse quickened. The shadow from the ballroom had not disappeared. It was here, somewhere in the palace, patient and calculating, and now it seemed it had found them. Kalen moved toward the source of the sound, his steps silent, careful. Alara followed, her heart pounding in her chest. The chamber felt smaller now, the shadows longer and darker. Yet she did not falter. The courage she had found within herself, the guidance and protection of Kalen, gave her the strength to face the unknown. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked and masked, its presence both threatening and deliberate. Kalen stepped forward, placing himself between Alara and the figure. "You should not be here," he said, his voice calm but sharp, like steel wrapped in velvet. The figure said nothing, but the air around them seemed to pulse with intent. Alara felt a strange chill run down her spine. This was not just a casual visitor. This was someone who had come for a purpose, someone who would not leave without achieving it. Kalen's eyes met hers, and in that moment she understood. She was not alone. Together, they would face whatever challenge this shadow brought. Together, they would survive. And together, they would awaken something far greater than either of them had imagined. The chamber held its breath, waiting for the first move. And in that quiet, tense moment, Alara realized that the story of her life, her courage, and her heart was only beginning. The first light of dawn crept over the palace of Eldoria, spilling golden rays across the marble floors and stained glass windows. The grand halls, which had once echoed with music and laughter, now seemed heavy with silence, as though holding their breath for what was to come. Lady Alara stood beside Kalen at the entrance to the throne room, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear. The palace had changed during the night. Secrets that had been buried in shadows had begun to surface. Whispers of betrayal drifted through the corridors, and Alara knew that the shadowy figure from the ballroom was not alone. Danger was near, but she no longer felt helpless. The Heartstone had awakened something within her, a courage she had never known, a strength that could not be denied. Kalen turned to her, his dark eyes intense but soft. "Tonight," he said, his voice low, "we face what has haunted this palace for years. But you are not alone, Alara. We face it together." Alara nodded, gripping his hand tightly. For the first time, she did not feel afraid. She felt ready. Ready to stand, ready to fight, not with swords alone, but with courage, wit, and heart. They entered the throne room. The space was vast, with tall windows letting in the morning light and long banners hanging from the walls. Yet the beauty of the room did little to mask the tension that had taken root. In the center stood the traitor, a noble she had recognized from the ballroom, cloaked and defiant, a dangerous smile playing across his lips. His eyes flicked to Alara, and she felt the weight of his intent. "You have grown bold, Lady Alara," the noble sneered. "Daring to walk these halls after the events of last night." Alara's hand did not tremble. "I am not the same as last night," she said, her voice steady. "And neither is this palace the same as before." Kalen stepped forward, his presence towering and commanding. "Step aside or face the consequences of your treachery," he warned, his voice echoing through the hall like the tolling of a bell. The noble laughed softly, a sound devoid of warmth. "You think your king can protect you. You think you alone can change fate. This palace has been ruled by fear for generations, and fear is not so easily lifted." Alara felt a spark of resolve ignite within her. "Then it is time someone tried," she said, stepping forward. She felt the warmth of the Heartstone in her pocket, its glow like a pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She was no longer a shadow. She was a force, a presence that could not be ignored. Kalen's hand brushed hers, a silent encouragement. "Together," he said. The noble drew back slightly, realizing the unity between them. Kalen's strength, combined with Alara's courage, created a presence neither enemy nor ally could overlook. The atmosphere in the room shifted, the air charged with anticipation. "You cannot stop what is coming," the noble warned, moving to draw a hidden dagger. Kalen's movement was swift. He intercepted the noble, disarming him without harm. Alara stepped forward, the heartstone glowing brighter in her palm. A warmth spread through the room, a quiet power that seemed to respond to her courage. "Your time of betrayal is over," Alara said, her voice calm but firm. "The palace belongs to those who protect it, not those who seek to destroy it." The noble's expression faltered as he realized that his threats held no weight against the unity before him. Kalen stepped beside Alara, his presence both protective and commanding. The palace itself seemed to respond to their courage. The light in the windows seemed brighter, the banners fluttered gently as if in approval. Defeated, the noble knelt, understanding that his plans had failed. Kalen's eyes softened, but he did not lower his guard. "Let this be a lesson," he said. "Loyalty and courage will always triumph over treachery." The noble bowed his head in acknowledgement. I understand, my king," he murmured. Kalen turned to Alara, his dark eyes filled with admiration. "You have done more than I expected," he said. "You faced fear and you did not falter." Alara smiled, a mixture of relief and pride. She had faced the shadows of the palace, the whispers of the court, and the threat of betrayal, and she had stood strong. But more than that, she had realized that strength was not just about survival. It was about courage, compassion, and the willingness to stand beside those you trust. "You have changed this place," Kalen said softly, "and in doing so you have changed me." Alara felt her chest tighten at his words. She had entered the palace as a shadow of her former self, bruised and uncertain. And now she stood as someone transformed, someone capable of influencing not just her own destiny but the destiny of those around her. Kalen reached out, taking her hand in both of his. "Alara, this palace, this kingdom, and even I are not beyond hope. With courage, with trust, and with heart, we can shape a future free from fear." Alara nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection and purpose. I believe that now," she said, her voice steady. "I believe in the strength we have together." The heartstone pulsed warmly in her hand, a reminder of the courage and unity that had brought them to this moment. It was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a symbol of transformation, of hope, and of destiny fulfilled. Outside, the palace began to awaken with the light of day. Courtiers and servants emerged from their chambers, sensing the shift in the air. Rumors of the night's events spread quickly, and whispers of courage, loyalty, and change replaced the shadows of fear that had once ruled the halls. Alara and Kalen stood together in the throne room, a united front against any future threats. The palace had survived the night, but more importantly, they had survived as individuals transformed by trust, courage, and compassion. Kalen's voice broke the quiet. "Alara, what we have begun here, it is only the start. There will be challenges ahead, but with courage and heart, we can face them all." Alara squeezed his hand, a sense of peace and determination filling her. "I am ready," she said. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Just as she spoke, a letter sealed with a mysterious crest was delivered to Kalen. He opened it carefully, scanning the contents. His expression remained calm but thoughtful. "It seems the palace is not yet free from all threats," Kalen said, folding the letter. "There are forces beyond these walls that still seek to test us, but we are prepared, and we will face them as we always will together." Alara nodded, understanding that their journey was far from over, yet she no longer felt fear. She had faced shadows, betrayal, and uncertainty, and she had emerged stronger, braver, and united with someone who valued her courage and heart. Together, they stepped onto the balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The morning sun bathed them in golden light, the fountain sparkling like jewels. Birds sang softly in the trees, and the palace seemed to breathe with newfound life. Alara looked at Kalen, her heart full. "Thank you," she said softly. "For seeing me, for trusting me, for helping me find my strength." Kalen's gaze held hers, unwavering and warm. "No, Alara, thank you, for showing me that even a king can be changed by courage, by trust, and by the heart of someone brave enough to stand." The The two stood together, hands clasped, hearts united. The palace had survived, their enemies had been challenged, and a new chapter had begun, not just for the kingdom but for themselves. As they gazed over the gardens, the wind carried a soft, reassuring whisper. The shadows of the night were behind them, and ahead lay a future of hope, courage, and transformation. And though challenges would come, they knew that together they could face anything. The story of Lady Alara and Kaelin, the Alpha King, was no longer one of fear and shadows. It was a story of trust, redemption, and the power of courage and heart to change destiny. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the palace walls, a new adventure waited, promising that their journey had only just begun.